Elara had always known she was different. In a world where every human was born with a wolf companion, her own birth had been a quiet tragedy. No wolf had come for her. No spirit had entered her tiny body as it had for others. She was wolfless, a mark of shame in her village, and the people made sure she felt it every single day. From sunrise to sunset, the village echoed with laughter and whispers, all aimed at her. Children pointed fingers, imitating wolf calls mockingly. Alphas, the most powerful of wolf-bonded humans, looked at her with contempt. Even the elders avoided her gaze. Some said her blood was cursed. Some said she was incomplete. But the truth was far simpler. She was born alone. Elara learned to survive on the edges. She lived in a small wooden cabin, set deep within the border of the forest, where the trees thickened and the wolves' howls felt less like a threat and more like a reminder of everything she had lost. She spent hours wandering among the trees, listening to the rustle of leaves and the quiet whispers of the wind. Though no wolf had claimed her, there was a strange comfort in the forest itself, as if the trees and the shadows understood her loneliness. Every day brought the same torment. The alphas would pass through the village on their way to hunt or patrol. Their wolves ran beside them, powerful and sleek, eyes glowing with loyalty. Elara would hide her face, knowing the mocking words were coming. "Look at her," one alpha sneered, a grin stretching across his strong face. "The wolfless girl. She should be locked away where she belongs." Elara's cheeks burned, but she refused to cry. She had cried enough as a child. She had learned that tears only gave them more satisfaction. Instead, she would stand silently, letting the wind whip her hair around her face, pretending she did not hear. Inside, though, a fire was growing. Not anger at them. She had felt anger for years, but a longing to be more than what they believed she could ever be. One evening, as the sun sank behind the mountains and painted the forest in deep gold and shadow, Elara wandered farther than usual. Her bare feet sank into the mossy ground, and the air smelled of damp earth and pine. She felt the forest calling her, guiding her steps. That's when she saw it. A stone ruin, partially hidden by thick vines and mist, stood in a clearing. It looked ancient, older than any village house, older than the oldest stories she had heard whispered around fires. There was a strange glow surrounding it, faint but insistent, like a heartbeat in the air. Elara felt drawn to it, her curiosity stronger than the fear she had learned to carry. She stepped closer. The ruin was covered in runes carved deep into the stone walls. They pulsed faintly, as if alive, shifting in the moonlight. She ran her fingers over them, feeling warmth spread through her hands. Something inside the ruins seemed to recognize her. She was not sure what it was, magic, spirit, destiny, but it called to her in a way no one in the village ever had. A low growl echoed through the clearing. Elara froze, her heart pounding, but it was not a wolf. Or if it was unlike any she had seen. Shadow coalesced in the center of the ruin, forming the shape of a wolf, but larger, more powerful, with eyes that glowed like molten gold. It was silent but aware, and when it looked at her, she felt a strange warmth, a connection she had never felt with another living being. "You see me," she whispered, unsure if she was speaking aloud or just in her mind. The wolf stepped closer, and the ground beneath it seemed to hum. Elara's chest rose and fell, her breath caught between fear and awe. She had never imagined such a creature existed. Her entire life she had thought being wolfless meant she would never know power, never know connection, and yet here it was, not as a pet, not as a gift, but as a mirror to something deep within her. She reached out her hand, trembling, and the wolf lowered its head. When her fingers brushed its fur, a shock ran through her body. Her skin prickled. Her hair lifted slightly as if charged by electricity, and her heart raced faster than ever before. A whisper filled her mind, a voice not her own. "You are not lost. You are waiting." The words were soft, almost like the wind, but they made her knees buckle. She stumbled back, gripping the stone wall for support. Her wolf spirit, if this was one. It was awakening something in her that had been dormant all her life, something that had been waiting for this very moment. For hours she stayed there, unsure of what had happened or if it had truly happened at all. The moon climbed high, silvering the ruin, and the shadows of the trees danced around her. When she finally left, she did so slowly, her mind ablaze with possibilities she had never dared imagine. Something inside her had changed. She could feel it in her bones, in the air that brushed against her skin. She had been wolfless all her life, And now, for the first time, she felt a spark of power stir within her. The next morning, the village greeted her as usual, with whispers and sneers. But Elara walked through it differently. She lifted her chin, her shoulders straight, and her eyes, dark and resolute, met the mocking stares without flinching. She was no longer only the girl who had nothing. She carried something hidden, something dangerous. The alphas noticed it too. Their laughter faltered for a moment when she passed. Kyle, the young alpha prince known for his skill and arrogance, gave her a long, calculating look. There was recognition there, though not of her weakness but of her potential. It was a look that sparked unease, and it made her pulse quicken. For the first time she felt seen, and not in pity, but Elara also knew she was not ready. The power had only begun to awaken. She had felt a connection to something primal, something ancient, but she did not yet understand it. And in a world where every wolf-bonded human would see her as an enemy, being too powerful too soon could be dangerous. So she kept her secret. She returned to the forest each night, to the ruin, learning, listening, feeling. She practiced control, though clumsily. And each night the wolf spirit grew stronger in her presence, patient and silent, waiting for the moment she would be ready. Yet, even as she trained in secret, she could feel the whispers growing louder in the village. The alphas began to speak more of her in guarded tones. Some laughed at her still, thinking she was nothing more than a girl playing with shadows. But others, fewer, more cautious, looked at her with suspicion, sensing that something had changed. Elara did not fear them. Not anymore. She had been alone her entire life, pushed aside and mocked, but she was no longer helpless. The forest, the shadows, and the ancient wolf spirit had chosen her. She would not bow. She would not flee. And yet, deep inside, a small part of her feared what was coming. The power she had touched was not small. It was ancient, hungry, and patient. It would demand more of her than she could yet imagine. And the alphas, the ones who had mocked her all her life, would not let her rise without challenge. The fire in her chest burned brighter than ever as she gazed at the horizon, where the village met the forest. One day they would know her strength. One day all the alphas would bow. But before that day came, she had to survive, and she had to learn. Her story was no longer just one of being bullied or being alone. It was becoming something greater, something terrifyingly beautiful, and the forest had chosen her as its own. Elara clenched her fists, letting the first hint of a wolf's growl escape her throat. It was quiet, almost like a whisper, but it was there, and for the first time she smiled, not a small defeated smile, but a wide, fierce, knowing smile. The world had never seen her like this before, and it would not forget her again. The nights in the forest had a new meaning for Elara. Since her encounter with the ancient ruin and the wolf spirit, every shadow seemed alive. Every rustle of leaves a whisper meant only for her. She could feel the stirrings of power deep in her chest, a pulse that matched the heartbeat of the forest itself. It was as though the earth, the wind, and even the trees had taken notice of her presence. At first it was subtle. She noticed she could hear things no one else could. The soft padding of a fox in the underbrush, the distant growl of a wolf pack, even the faint movement of birds hidden high in the canopy. Her senses sharpened, and with them, a strange energy coursed through her limbs. She could run faster, leap farther, and her reflexes were no longer ordinary. Every step she took seemed to echo with power, though she could not yet control it fully. One evening, as the sun bled behind the mountains and the forest was bathed in silver light, she returned to the ruin. The wolf spirit was there, waiting, silent and patient. Its eyes, molten gold and unblinking, seemed to pierce her very soul. "You are awake," it whispered in her mind. Not a voice of words, but a feeling of understanding, a pull she could not resist. Elara stepped closer. Her hand shook, but she reached out and touched the spirit again. This time the power surged like a river breaking through a dam. She stumbled backward as her vision blurred, then cleared to reveal the world differently. Colors were sharper, sounds richer, and every movement around her was amplified. It was beautiful and frightening. "Control it," the spirit seemed to say, its presence a shadow within her own mind, "or it will control you." Elara fell to her knees, breathing heavily. She had never felt anything like this before. All her life she had been the powerless one, the girl laughed at for her wolfless existence. Now she could feel strength that rivaled the alphas themselves, yet she could barely manage it. Her pulse was fire and her mind raced with possibilities. The forest suddenly stirred. From the shadows, a figure emerged, a young man with a wolf at his side. His eyes were sharp, assessing, filled with curiosity and something else she could not quite place. Kale. He was one of the alphas, a prince of the wolf-bonded humans, known for both his skill in battle and his pride. Ilara's stomach twisted as he approached. The last thing she wanted was to be mocked again, but this time she felt different. She felt the quiet hum of power inside her, and for the first time she did not bow. "You," Kale said, his voice calm but firm. "You've been different lately. I see it in the way the forest moves around you." Ilara's eyes narrowed. "I am not afraid of the forest. Or of you." Her voice, though soft, carried an unfamiliar strength. It surprised even her. Kale studied her for a long moment. "I can see the wolf spirit within you. It is strong but uncontrolled. If you cannot master it, it will destroy you, and anyone near you." Ilara's chest tightened. The thought of harming anyone was terrifying. She had spent her life being powerless, and the last thing she wanted was to become a monster in their eyes, or worse, in her own. "Then teach me," she said, surprising herself. Her words carried a quiet determination. "I will not let it control me." Kyle's lips curved slightly. Not a smile, not yet, but a recognition. "Very well. But it will not be easy." For days they met in secret. Kale guided her through exercises, testing her reflexes, teaching her to focus her senses, to channel the energy coursing through her. At first she stumbled, falling into the dirt or losing control in small bursts. But Kale was patient though firm, pushing her harder than she had ever been pushed in her life. During these moments there was an unspoken tension between them. Kale was proud, disciplined, and unyielding, a prince and an alpha. Ilara was fiery, independent, and fiercely determined, a wolfless girl who had been underestimated her entire life. Yet beneath the surface both recognized something rare: respect. And slowly an ember of something more, curiosity, admiration, began to burn. One night, under a full moon that painted the forest silver, Kale led her to a cliff overlooking the village. The air was thick with magic and tension. "You feel it now, don't you?" he asked, voice low. "The way the forest responds to you, the wolves, the trees, even the wind bends around your presence." Ilara nodded, fear and wonder mixing in her chest. "It's like the world is alive. I've never felt anything like it." "Good," Kale said. "You must learn to move with it, not against it. Control comes not from force, but from understanding." As they trained, something unexpected happened. The wolf spirit within her began to respond more actively, manifesting in glimpses, a shadow moving just beyond sight, a whisper of fur brushing against the night air, eyes glowing in reflection of her own. It was no longer just a power waiting to awaken. It was a living force, testing her resolve, judging her worth. But the village did not remain unaware. Rumors spread like wildfire. The alphas began to whisper among themselves, some with curiosity, others with fear. A wolfless girl showing signs of awakening power was unheard of. Some feared she might challenge the hierarchy, disrupt centuries of tradition. Others were simply envious, unwilling to accept that a girl they had mocked could possess strength beyond their comprehension. Ilara ignored their whispers. She had endured their ridicule all her life. She had learned to survive. Now she focused only on the forest, on the spirit, and on Kale's guidance. Every night she grew stronger, learning to move faster, to see in the dark, to sense the world in ways she had never imagined. And every night the tension with Kale grew, subtle and electric, as if the air between them was charged with something unspoken. One evening, while they practiced near the ruined shrine, a sudden surge of power erupted from her. The wolf spirit fully manifested for a moment, taking shape in the moonlight as a massive, shadowy wolf, eyes blazing. Kale stumbled back, surprised, his hand instinctively resting on the hilt of his sword. "Ilara," he shouted, his voice sharp but not angry. "Focus, control it." She closed her eyes, feeling the power, feeling the spirit, feeling herself. It was exhilarating, terrifying, and beautiful all at once. Slowly, she drew a deep breath and the manifestation faded. The clearing was still. Only the night wind moved, whispering through the trees. Kyle looked at her with something close to awe. You are unlike anything I've ever seen," he said quietly. "If you master this, you could change everything. The packs, the alphas, everyone." Ilara's heart pounded. For the first time, she felt possibility instead of fear. She was no longer the wolfless girl hiding in the shadows. She was something new, something powerful, something feared and admired all at once. But as the night deepened, a chill ran down her spine. This awakening was not without consequence. Somewhere in the shadows beyond the forest, eyes watched. Alpha eyes, wary and calculating, sensing a shift in power. They would not ignore her for long. And when they came, she would have to face not only her own fears but the resentment and envy of those who had ruled over her life with cruelty. Ilara did not flinch. She had spent too long being powerless. She had endured their mockery, their whispers, their laughter. Now she was ready to rise. The wolf spirit within her pulsed, strong and patient, as if waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And when that moment came, all who had scorned her would see what she was truly capable of. As she returned to the ruins that night, Kyle at her side, a sense of destiny settled over her. The forest seemed to hum in approval. The wolf spirit stirred within her, growing stronger, hungering for the day she would fully claim it. And far beyond, the alphas whispered among themselves, uncertain, uneasy, aware that something extraordinary was coming, and that it would change everything. Ilara had begun her transformation, and nothing, not mockery, not fear, not centuries of tradition, could stop her now. The forest seemed different now. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper of the wind, and every distant howl of a wolf reminded Ilara that she was no longer merely a girl on the edges of the world. She had begun to awaken, to claim the power that had always been dormant within her. But with that awakening came responsibility and danger. Kale had become her guide, though neither of them admitted what their nightly training meant. His patience, once distant and cautious, had softened into something more profound. And yet the tension between them had grown, quiet and electric, lingering in glances, in brush of hands during exercises, and in the unspoken understanding of shared vulnerability. Tonight, they trained near the ruins again, under a full moon that spilled silver across the clearing. Ilara crouched low, eyes fixed on Kyle as he demonstrated a move. The wolf spirit stirred inside her, responding to the energy between them, pulsing and thrumming, as if aware of the bond forming not only between her and Kyle, but between herself and the forest itself. "You're tense," Kyle said quietly, stepping closer. "Feel it, let it flow through you. Not like a weapon, but like water." Ilara swallowed, focusing on the rhythm of her own breathing, on the pulse of energy rising from her chest. Slowly, she moved, weaving around Kyle, mimicking the grace of a wolf she had never known. Her reflexes sharpened, her body felt lighter, almost weightless. "You're improving," Kale admitted, his voice carrying warmth that made her pulse quicken. "Faster than I expected." Ilara's heart skipped. "Is that good?" she asked, a small smile tugging at her lips. Kale didn't answer immediately. He only nodded, his eyes lingering on hers for a moment longer than necessary before he turned back. Something unspoken hung in the air, as palpable as the moonlight on the trees. But the moment of quiet peace did not last. A distant shout broke the night, sharp and angry. Ilara's ears twitched instinctively. Her wolf senses picked up movement, fast, controlled, calculated. Alphas. "They're here," she murmured, stepping back instinctively. "They've found us." Kale's expression hardened. "It's inevitable. Your power won't stay secret for long, and some of them, they won't want to see you grow." Ilara's pulse quickened, but fear did not take her. Not now, not ever again. She had endured mockery, humiliation, and solitude. She had survived, and now she was ready to face those who had scorned her all her life. From the shadows of the trees, a group of alphas emerged. Their wolves padded silently beside them, eyes glinting in the moonlight. The leader, a tall man with sharp features and an air of authority, stepped forward. His gaze was cold, calculating. "Ilara," he said, voice ringing with challenge. "We've heard rumors. Whispers that you are awakening, that you are no longer what you were." Ilara stood taller, feeling the surge of power within her respond to their challenge. She met his gaze without flinching. "I am exactly what I am, and I am not afraid of you." The leader smirked. Bold words for a girl who has lived her life without a wolf. "Are you ready to prove them?" Ilara felt the wolf spirit stir, a low growl vibrating within her chest. She did not need to answer. Her stance, firm and resolute, spoke louder than words. Kale stepped to her side, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Remember," he whispered, "focus. Control it, don't fight it. Show them who you are. The leader's lips curled into a grin. Very well. A challenge, then. Show us the power of the wolfless. The alphas moved with practiced precision, circling her like predators. Wolves flanked them, muscles taut, ready to strike. Alara's eyes swept the clearing, sensing every movement. Her body moved almost instinctively, guided by the wolf spirit within her. She ducked, leapt and spun with a fluidity that startled even her. One alpha lunged, attempting to grab her shoulder, but she sidestepped and used his momentum to send him sprawling. Another came at her from behind, faster than she could react, but the wolf spirit guided her reflexes, and she twisted just in time, letting him stumble past. Cale watched silently, impressed, noting every movement, every adjustment she made. Good, he muttered, though his voice was lost in the night. Better than I expected. Alara's breaths came fast, her heart pounding, but she felt alive in a way she never had before. For the first time, the whispers of the village, the scorn of the alphas, the mocking laughter of those who had called her hollow, they all seemed distant, meaningless. She was no longer powerless. She was becoming something the world could not ignore. Suddenly, the wolf spirit manifested fully for a brief moment, a shadowy, colossal form that mirrored her movements, eyes blazing like molten gold. The alphas froze, startled. Even the leader's confident smirk faltered. This is impossible, one of them whispered. Alara felt a thrill surge through her. The spirit was not just a power, it was an extension of herself, an affirmation that she belonged to something greater than she had ever imagined. Yet beneath the exhilaration, she felt a flicker of caution. Control was key. If she lost it now, she could be destroyed, or worse, she could destroy them. The leader stepped forward again, attempting to assert dominance, but Alara did not move in fear. Instead, she let the wolf spirit guide her stance, her gaze unwavering. Slowly, the massive shadow receded, disappearing into the moonlit forest. Silence fell. Only the wind rustled through the trees. The alphas exchanged uneasy glances, realizing that the girl they had mocked for years was no longer ordinary. She had power, presence, and a resolve that challenged their hierarchy. Cale's hand tightened briefly on her shoulder. You see, he said quietly. They respect strength, not birthright, and you have strength they cannot ignore. Alara's chest rose and fell rapidly. Pride mingled with relief, but also a deep, unspoken fear. She knew this was only the beginning. The alphas would not let her rise without a fight, and the wolf spirit within her, though patient and loyal, would demand more of her than she had yet learned to give. As the alphas retreated, one last look from the leader lingered. It was not just caution. There was challenge in his gaze, a promise that they would return. And when they did, Alara would have to be ready, not just in power, but in spirit. Kyle stayed by her side as they walked back to the ruins. The tension between them had shifted. No longer merely teacher and student. They were partners in a battle that had only just begun, and though neither spoke of it, both sensed the bond growing between them. Something forged in the fire of challenge, tempered by trust and strengthened by shared secrets. That night, Alara returned to the shrine alone. The wolf spirit stirred within her, responding to her presence with a quiet hum. She placed her hands on the ancient runes, letting the energy flow through her. She could feel her power growing stronger, her senses sharper, her instincts keener, but she also felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. The forest outside whispered in warning. She was no longer invisible. The alphas had seen her strength. The world was beginning to take notice. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, forces older and more dangerous than the alphas were watching, waiting for the moment she would fully awaken. Alara closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She had endured a lifetime of ridicule. She had been the girl laughed at, the outcast, the wolfless one. But no longer. The fire within her burned brighter than fear, brighter than doubt. She was rising, and the forest, the wolf spirit, and the night itself seemed to rally around her. A distant howl echoed across the trees, deep and powerful. It was a call, not of warning, but of recognition. The wolves of the forest, sensing the awakening of something ancient, responded in kind. Alara's pulse quickened. She was part of something bigger now, a force that could not be ignored. As she opened her eyes, the moonlight glinting off the ruins, she knew the challenge would come soon. The alphas would return, stronger and more determined. But she was ready, not just to fight, but to claim her place, to stand tall, and to show the world that the wolfless girl was no longer powerless. And in the shadows of the forest, Kyle watched, a mix of admiration and worry in his gaze. The bond between them had grown stronger, silent but undeniable. Whatever came next, they would face it together, or fail together. Ilara's journey was far from over. The power inside her was growing. The alphas were circling, and the wolf spirit waited patiently for her to fully embrace it. Soon the world would see her for what she truly was. The dawn broke over the forest with a light that seemed unusually bright, casting silver streaks through the mist. Ilara stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking the valley below, feeling the wind whip around her, lifting her hair and tugging at her cloak. Today she would face the trial that had been whispered about for generations, a test of strength, spirit, and will. A trial that would either solidify her place in the world or see her fall back into obscurity. The ruins of the ancient shrine had revealed their true purpose. The wolf spirit, patient and commanding, had guided her here, to the sacred battleground hidden deep within the forest. Stone pillars jutted from the earth, engraved with runes that glowed faintly in the morning light. Legends said only those who embraced both the human heart and the wolf spirit within could survive the trial. Kyle approached silently, his shadow merging with hers. He had trained her for months, pushing her limits and testing her control. Now he simply watched, his eyes sharp, assessing and protective. "Are you ready?" he asked softly, though his voice carried weight. Ilara took a deep breath, feeling the power pulse inside her chest. Her senses were alive. The scent of the grass, the hum of the wind, even the distant movement of creatures hidden from sight. She nodded, her gaze steady. "I am," she said. "I am ready." The trial began with a test of agility. From the shadows, creatures emerged. Not ordinary beasts, but manifestations of the forest itself. Wolves made of shadow and flame, spirits that mirrored the strength of the ancient wolf. Ilara's heart raced, but the wolf spirit stirred in her, guiding her. She leapt, spun, and ducked, dodging each attack with a precision she had not known she possessed. Every movement felt like a dance, fluid and natural. Kyle's voice rang in her mind. "Focus, let the spirit guide, not force. Trust yourself." The creatures closed in, testing not only her reflexes but her instincts. One shadow wolf lunged from the trees, teeth bared, eyes glowing. Ilara sidestepped and felt the wolf spirit within respond, lending her strength. She rolled across the ground, narrowly avoiding its strike, and felt exhilaration course through her veins. This was not fear, it was empowerment. But the trial was not just physical. The spirits began to shift, forming illusions meant to test her mind and heart. She saw her past, the mocking faces of the villagers, the sneers of the alphas, the whispers that had haunted her all her life. The wolf spirit surged within her, but she wavered. The memories struck deep, threatening to break her focus. "You are stronger than your fear," Kale's voice echoed in her mind, steady and calm. "Remember why you fight?" Ilara clenched her fists, feeling the surge of power respond to her determination. She had endured a lifetime of ridicule. She had been called weak, hollow, unworthy. Now she would prove that none of it defined her. She exhaled slowly, letting the fear wash away, replaced by fire and clarity. As the illusions faded, a new challenge arose. A massive shadow wolf, larger than any she had ever seen. Its eyes were molten gold, mirroring her own, and it moved with a grace and power that took her breath away. The forest itself seemed to bend around it, the air thick with energy. This was the heart of the trial. She had to face it not with force, but with understanding, merging her own spirit with that of the wolf. Ilara's heart pounded, but she did not back away. She stepped forward, closing her eyes, feeling the wolf spirit surge within her. The massive shadow lunged. Ilara braced herself, letting instinct take over. The spirit flowed through her, guiding her movements. She leapt, twisting through the air, and landed lightly on the ground. The shadow wolf circled her, testing, judging, but she did not strike. Instead, she mirrored its movements, matching its grace, showing respect for its strength. Time seemed to stretch. Her body and spirit moved as one with the wolf, instinct and intellect in harmony. Slowly, the shadow wolf lowered its head, acknowledging her. The forest fell silent, and the sun broke through the mist, illuminating the clearing in golden light. Ilara opened her eyes, her chest heaving. The wolf spirit had fully merged with her, not as a separate entity, but as a part of her being. She was no longer just human, nor just the wolfless girl. She was something greater, a fusion of courage, strength, and ancient power. Kyle stepped forward, awe in his gaze. "You did it," he said softly. "You've passed the first trial. You've shown strength, control, and understanding. You've become more than anyone could have imagined. Alara's legs trembled, not from exhaustion but from the intensity of the experience. She had faced her fears, her loneliness, and the whispers of ridicule. She had embraced the power that had waited for her all her life. And now she stood taller, stronger, and more certain than ever. But the trial was not yet over. The forest shifted again, and from the shadows emerged figures cloaked in darkness. These were not alphas. Their presence was ancient, almost otherworldly, and their eyes glowed with a knowledge that sent shivers down her spine. "You have awakened," a deep voice intoned. "But power comes with responsibility. Are you ready to accept what it demands?" Alara felt the wolf spirit stir, tense and alert. She stepped forward, meeting the gaze of the shadowed figures. "I accept," she said firmly. "I will not run. I will not hide. I will face whatever is required." The figures nodded, and the shadows began to recede. The trial had not ended with combat alone. It had tested her heart, her mind, and her will. She had shown courage, understanding, and a capacity for growth that surpassed even the expectations of the forest. Kale placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and grounding. "You've done more than survive," he said. "You've proven that you can rise above everything that tried to hold you down. But this is only the beginning. Your true test is yet to come, the challenge of the alphas and the world beyond." Alara nodded, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. For the first time, she understood the depth of her own power. She was no longer defined by the absence of a wolf at her birth. She had found her own strength, her own spirit, and her own place in the world. But even in victory, there was a lingering unease. Somewhere in the shadows, forces older and stronger than the alphas watched her, waiting for the moment she would be fully ready. And when they came, she would have to face not only their strength but the choices that lay ahead. Choices between humanity and ultimate power, between fear and courage, between the girl she had been and the force she was becoming. That night, as she returned to the shrine, the forest alive with the sounds of nocturnal life, Kale walked beside her. The bond between them had deepened in ways neither had spoken aloud, forged through shared trials and silent understanding. There was trust, respect, and an unspoken connection that neither had named but both felt. "You've changed," Kyle said, finally breaking the silence. "Not just in power, but in presence. The forest, the wolves, even the alphas, they will see it. They will know." Ilara's gaze lifted to the moon, its silver light reflecting in her eyes. "I am no longer the girl they mocked," she said quietly. "I am something else, something they cannot ignore." Kale's hand brushed hers, a fleeting touch that spoke volumes. "And you will not face this alone," he said softly. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Ilara's chest rose and fell with a mixture of pride and anticipation. She had endured years of pain, mockery, and solitude. She had faced her fears, embraced the wolf spirit within, and proven her strength. The world could no longer dictate who she was. She would define it herself, but the night was far from over. A distant howl echoed across the forest, deep and powerful. It was not just the call of wolves, it was a summons, a warning, a herald of challenges yet to come. The alphas, the world of the packs, and the ancient forces that watched her all knew her awakening had begun. Alara closed her eyes, feeling the wolf spirit stir and the wind carrying the promise of what was next. She was ready, not just to fight but to rise, to lead, and to claim the place she had been denied all her life. And somewhere in the shadows the leader of the alphas watched, a calculated smile on his face. He had seen her power, he had seen her courage, and he was preparing for the confrontation that would test her, Kale, and the bond that had begun to form between them. Ilara's journey was far from over. The trial had tested her body, mind, and spirit. The forest had accepted her. The wolf spirit had merged with her. But the world beyond, with its rules, hierarchies, and enemies, awaited. She was no longer the wolfless girl. She was rising, and the world would bow or break. The sun rose over the forest in a blaze of gold and crimson, painting the treetops with fire. Today would decide everything. Alara stood at the edge of the clearing, her senses alive, her heart steady. She could feel the pulse of the wolf spirit within her, its energy flowing like a river through her veins, linking her to the forest, the creatures, and even to Kale at her side. The alphas had come. Their numbers were greater than before, their expressions cautious, a mixture of challenge and unease on every face. The leader, tall and proud, stepped forward. His eyes, sharp and calculating, were fixed on her, You have grown, he said, his voice steady but carrying a hint of respect. But power alone does not make one worthy. Today you prove your place among the alphas. Ilara met his gaze unwavering. She was no longer the girl who had been mocked and overlooked. She was strong, confident, and fully in tune with the wolf spirit that had guided her awakening. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. Kale stepped beside her, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. Remember, he whispered, strength is nothing without control, and courage without purpose is wasted. You are ready. You know this. Ilara nodded, feeling a warmth at his words. The connection between them had grown, forged in challenges, trust, and countless nights of training. It was unspoken but undeniable. Whatever happened today, they would face it together. The leader motioned and the alphas advanced. Wolves flanked them, eyes glowing, muscles coiled and ready. But Ilara did not flinch. The wolf spirit surged, a tide of strength, awareness, and instinct. She felt its presence as an extension of herself, guiding her movements, sharpening her reflexes, and filling her with a fearless clarity she had never known. The first alpha lunged. Ilara moved with precision, sidestepping and letting his momentum carry him forward. Her hands brushed against the earth, feeling the life force beneath her, connecting her to every tree, rock, and creature. The wolf spirit guided her, and her body moved as if dancing with the shadows. Another alpha charged, faster and stronger. Ilara met him head-on, their energies clashing in a moment of impact. She could feel the wolf spirit responding, amplifying her strength, sharpening her focus. The world seemed to slow, every movement deliberate, every decision clear. She did not strike recklessly. She did not falter. The leader watched silently, his expression unreadable, but there was a flicker in his eyes, a recognition of the girl who had once been powerless, now standing among the strongest, unmatched in agility, precision, and spirit. Then came the final test. From the shadows of the trees, a massive wolf emerged, not an ordinary creature, but one born of spirit, its form immense and glowing with a silver light. The forest seemed to bow around it, the ground trembling under its presence. Ilara felt the wolf spirit inside her stir with a low, deep growl. This was no ordinary challenge. This was a test of bond, of unity, and of control. She would have to merge fully with her spirit to face it, not with force, but with understanding and harmony. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward. Closing her eyes, she let the wolf spirit flow through her, feeling every heartbeat, every breath, every movement. She became the rhythm of the forest, the pulse of the earth, the essence of the wolves themselves. The massive spirit lunged. Ilara met it not with attack, but with alignment. She moved with it, matched its grace, mirrored its strength. The clearing became a dance of shadow and light, human and spirit moving as one. Kale watched, awe and admiration etched into his features. He had guided her, but now he realized she had surpassed even his expectations. She was no longer a student. She was a force, a legend in the making. Slowly, the spirit lowered its head, acknowledging her. The forest exhaled, and the sunlight broke through the canopy in shimmering beams. The alphas, even their leader, were silent. They had witnessed something extraordinary. A girl who had risen above ridicule, weakness, and doubt and claimed power that few could imagine. Ilara opened her eyes. Her chest heaved with exertion and triumph, but her mind was clear. The wolf spirit had fully merged with her. She was no longer simply human, nor merely wolfless. She was a new kind of being, strong, wise, and whole. The leader of the alphas stepped forward, his expression now softened, respect shining through where once there had been challenge. Ilara, he said, voice steady, you have proven yourself beyond doubt. You are no longer the wolfless girl. You are one of us and more. Ilara felt a surge of pride, but also a quiet serenity. This was not just victory, it was transformation. She had faced every fear, every whisper, every challenge that had once tried to define her, and she had risen above them all. Kel moved closer, his hand brushing hers, a small but deliberate gesture. You did it, he said softly. You are everything you were meant to be, and more. Ilara smiled, feeling the warmth of connection between them. She had never known such companionship, such understanding. It was as if the wolf spirit had not only guided her to power, but also to someone who saw her fully, not as the girl she had been, but as the force she had become. The alphas and their wolves began to bow subtly, acknowledging her strength. Those who had doubted her, mocked her, or overlooked her now recognized her as a force beyond their understanding. They were not afraid. They were in awe. The forest itself seemed to join in her triumph. The wind carried the scent of victory. The trees whispered in approval, and the distant howl of wolves echoed through the valley, a song of recognition and respect. Ilara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her journey settle on her shoulders, not as a burden but as a mantle she had earned. She was no longer powerless. She was no longer mocked. She was the wolfless girl who had transformed into something extraordinary, commanding not only respect but admiration, not only from the forest but from the world beyond. Kale's hand found hers fully now, fingers entwining. "Whatever comes next," he said, voice low and steady, "we face it together. You, me, the spirit. We are stronger than anything that can challenge us." Ilara squeezed his hand, feeling the truth in his words. She had faced every challenge, and now she knew that the journey was not about proving herself to others. It was about claiming her own power, embracing her spirit and walking forward with courage and conviction. The leader of the Alphas, observing the bond between them, nodded once more. "Your place is no longer at the edges," he said. "You are among the strongest, the bravest, and the most remarkable. The forest has chosen you, and so have we." Ilara felt a deep sense of fulfillment, but she knew her journey was only beginning. Power was not the end, it was the beginning of responsibility. The world awaited, with challenges, choices, and perhaps even greater adversaries. But now she would face them not as the girl they had laughed at, but as the wolfless girl who had risen, transformed, and commanded respect. Kyle stepped closer, eyes meeting hers. There was no need for words. She felt his strength, his trust, and his unwavering presence beside her. Together they had faced the trial, and together they would face the world beyond. Ilara closed her eyes, letting the wind carry her spirit, the wolf spirit within her humming in resonance. She had transformed, not only in strength but in heart and mind. The world had witnessed her rise, the Alphas had bowed, and she had claimed the place she had always deserved. The sun climbed higher, illuminating the forest in gold, and Ilara lifted her head, breathing in the warmth and light. She was no longer the girl who had been bullied, the wolfless one, the one laughed at. She was Ilara, the awakened, the powerful, the unyielding. And as she opened her eyes, she saw Kale, standing beside her, ready to walk forward into whatever came next. The bond between them, forged in trials and trust, was unbreakable. Together they were unstoppable. The forest echoed around them, alive with whispers of awe and recognition. Wolves howled in the distance. Spirits of the land acknowledged her, and the world seemed to shift, bowing in subtle acknowledgement of the wolfless girl who had transformed into a legend. Ilara took a deep breath, feeling the pulse of the wolf spirit in harmony with her own heartbeat. She had risen in nothing, and no one would ever make her bow again. The journey was only beginning, but for the first time in her life, Ilara was not afraid. She was powerful, she was respected, and she was ready for anything the world could throw at her. The wolfless girl had become a force to be reckoned with, and all who witnessed her rise would never forget her name.